Welcome into the All Cardinals excuse me. We thought it was gonna be All Cardinals. It's actually the All Sun Devils podcast. We did a last minute audible. We thought we were doing the All Cardinals first. We're gonna start off talking about the Sun Devils and ASU. Actually, Millard Thomas here, joined by Donnie Druin and Alex Weiner. Boys, how are you guys doing today?
Good. I know. I thought we were doing Cardinals first. That's why I put on the Rob Lowe, NFL hat. There's clearly not a logo on the other side. But you know what? Talk a little Sun Devils action. That's solid too.
Alex, at least you're in the right sport. I mean, I'm wearing a soccer shirt right now, so I mean, at least you're somewhat close.
How'd Barcelona do today?
Not great. Not great. It is depressed hours over here. We'll just say that.
I am carrying the branding on the podcast right now, wearing an Arizona State hoodie representing my alma mater. I believe it's your two former alma maters as well. I'm not too sure. Don, did you go to ASU?
I'm a community college dropout, brother.
All right. There's nothing wrong with community college or dropping out. Do whatever makes you happy, Donnie. But let's move on and let's discuss a little ASU football over here because ASU, we got some news. Last time we talked was, Donnie, I think it was a minute ago. I think it was even before the Territorial Cup. So maybe we should spend a couple of minutes on that. No pity for the kitty. But ASU has found out their opponent for their bowl game. They were bowl game eligible. They got one. They are heading to Las Vegas. It seems like they head to Las Vegas every year for their bowl game. They are playing in the Las Vegas Bowl. I'm not sure who the sponsor is. Maybe Donnie could tell us who that is. But they are playing against Wisconsin. Boys, Donnie, I'll start with you. How do we feel about that matchup, and how do we feel about the Sun Devils' chances going against the Badgers?
Yeah, I feel like whenever you talk about Wisconsin football, you're going to talk about a bunch of pro-ready kids on the offensive line. They historically run the ball extremely well. I feel like they always have like 2 or 3 kids that are going to be drafted at some point in the NFL draft. Just year after year, the running backs are always great. Quarterback play for them hasn't exactly been solid this year, and defensively, they kind of been middle of the pack, at least from my understanding. A lot of people thought Penn State was going to be the draw for ASU in Las Vegas, and I think that would have been just a little bit better of a matchup and probably more exciting matchup. Probably would have filled a little bit more seats in the stands at Allegiant Stadium, but especially with the couple of guys that have already declared they either weren't going to play in Arizona State's bowl game or have already transferred out of Arizona State. Sun Devils are kind of lacking just in terms of the talent department, at least from my understanding.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're going to be talking about that transfer portal pretty soon. But Alex, this bowl game, I'm not even sure how many we've seen during the Herman Edwards era, but this seems to be the same story with ASU every year. You start off hot, then you somehow end up 6-4 to end the season, but you get a pretty middling bowl game by the end of the year. Is there anything ASU could do in this game that makes you feel any better about their season this year or going into next season? Like, what does ASU have to do, or is there anything that they can do to make you feel happy about the way this season has gone this year?
Well, if you do look at it glass half full, this has, winning 8 games in the regular season for the first time in a while, first time in the Herm Edwards era. I believe first time since, I believe they can win their 9th game of the year for the first time since 2014 with a victory against Wisconsin. And they've been in Las Vegas Bowl before. A few years back, they took on Fresno State and lost that game. But this is still, it's a better bowl game than the Sun Bowl, which is what they had getting a little bit more frequently. And it's against Wisconsin, which is, a national brand, a team that's produced a lot of NFL talent, and is still a good team that's had some tight battles against some of the best teams in the country. They've had a tight battle this year against Michigan and Ohio State. And so there's, there'd be a little bit of extra clout with this one if they can somehow take this one home. They've also struggled in bowl games in recent years, and this is a very difficult matchup for them. So we'll see exactly what happens. As far as feelings about the season, not really. I mean, we know that there are going to be, we'll see what happens exactly with the investigation, if there are sanctions, if there's a postseason ban or whatever is going to happen next year. We don't know. And so that's going to be the big thing, is that I feel like next year is going to be a bit strange where, Jaden Daniels is coming back, Herm Edwards is coming back. We'll see what happens with Zak Hill, the offensive coordinator, and we'll see exactly what it looks like, because it could kind of feel like a year in limbo, but who knows? If Daniels takes another step forward, maybe that's the thing that we really attach ourselves to watch out for this team. So this year it was disappointing, just given the last given that 1 month stretch where they lost those games, Utah game, Washington State. But ultimately, they can help it a little bit. But I feel like next year is going to be weird enough where it doesn't matter.
So, Donnie, there's been some conversations we've had on this podcast about should Herm Edwards be on the hot seat? And we've heard AP talk about, I think, after that U of A game saying Herm Edwards will be back next season. So, do you feel like next season, like Alex was saying, could that be the year that is the make or break season for Herm Edwards? Because you do have Jaden Daniels coming back, which is, we've seen the 4-year progression of him now. And if he's not any better next season in his final year, second or third year under Zak Hill, like what have we actually gained from this Herm Edwards era? Of course, like Alex said, this could be considered one of their best seasons in recent history, but still 8 wins in the Las Vegas Bowl was not what we signed up for when we hired Herm Edwards. So even though this game might not have huge implications for next season, going into next year, how do you feel about Coach Herm Edwards' job security?
I feel like if any year Arizona State was going to do something, it was going to be this year, right? I mean, Jaden Daniels coming off the couple good years that he had, the senior veteran leadership that was on the defense, just the talent almost at every skill position that you saw basically from a side wide receiver. But even then, I feel like Ricky Parasol is a phenomenal player. I feel like all the stars aligned for 2021 to be the year. And after everybody leaving this year, after I guess another disappointing year, I feel like if you would have guaranteed somebody 9 wins from Arizona State, assuming they do win the bowl game, they probably would have taken that. Mm-hmm. With everything kind of going on, like Alex already mentioned, the investigation and kind of the cloud that's hanging over the university from that, I feel like next year is, like Alex said, it's going to be weird. Nobody really knows what to expect. Yeah, Jaden Daniels is coming back, but what's Jaden Daniels coming back to? Rashad White's going to the NFL. Chip Trainum is transferring out to the transfer portal. I like Ngata. I don't know what Ngata is going to look like as he down back. They do have Tevin White, a 4-star commit coming in for next year's class. He looks to be pretty solid. You have a couple of offensive linemen, key offensive linemen, departing and graduating as well. Really no big time receivers coming in through next year's class, and you really don't see anybody taking the jump from the existing talent on the roster. I'm not so sure this team's going to be better than 2021. And in terms of Herm Edwards' hot seat, I feel like he was already kind of on the hot seat this year. Maybe they just want to see some sort of consistency at the head coaching position. There seems to be a lot of trust with Herm Edwards, and maybe they're just kind of banking on the NCAA investigation to come down, wanting Herm to kind of guide them through that, because one of the worst things you can have happen is the investigation to come down, your head coach departs, and you're basically picking up the scraps and starting over from square one. I don't think Arizona State wants to do that. I think they just want to have some sort of consistent and reliable person to kind of guide them through the dark waters and get them out of it.
I think that's the key there. I think that's the most important point there, is that as to why they're so, why they came out and basically like Herm Edwards is coming back. This is, not going to be, a subject throughout this offseason. I mean, exactly what, Donnie said, we don't know exactly what's going to happen next year. And so he's like the perfect, he's been there. The guys who have come have signed up to be part of the pro model with Herm Edwards leading the charge. And, for all their shortcomings, he is a commanding voice in the room who, has, tons of, football experience, even if it's not college football head coaching experience. And he's going to be sort of that mature voice and guide through potentially what could be a dark season. We'll see exactly. We'll see, more guys transfer out. And Tommy Hill transferred out today. He would have been a guy that potentially could have competed for one of those cornerback spots next year. We'll see if there's anybody else. But, that's sort of why you bring him back so quickly. And that's, what they're going to hope, that he can be able to kind of be that guy who gets them through it. And if they want to move on after that, that's when you look at it. It's like, all right, a new guy's coming in, and he's not going to have this weird sanctioned season. He's going to come into a fresh environment, as opposed to what Donnie mentioned, which is going to be a little bit weird.
Right. Really quick, I know a lot of people aren't big on Herm Edwards' X's and O's and all that good stuff, but in this kind of what Arizona State is about to enter, I feel like the university wanted a leader to kind of push them through. And in terms of just leadership and what we'd heard from fellow assistant coaches, players, former players, all the good stuff, former colleagues at ESPN, I mean, you're really not going to find a guy better suited for the leadership role than Herm Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you basically just took my point, Donnie. You basically stole
My
it
bad.
before I was going to say it because I was going to just say, yeah, you basically said it. I was just going to say the X's and O's. There's a lot of question marks when it comes to Herm Edwards, but when it comes to being a leader and leading these young group of guys off the field, I don't think there's any questions about that. He seems to be a phenomenal personality, both with the media, both with the players. Everyone seems to love Herm Edwards. The coaches seem to love Herm Edwards. So even though we might have questions about him as a football coach in the X's and O's sense, I think we don't have any questions about him as the leader of young men. So Herm Edwards, it does seem like he'll be back next season, and then we'll see what goes from there. But that pro model you talked about, Alex, it seems like it's going to be taking a hit, has already taken a hit this past week because, as you mentioned, we got Tommy Hill. He's transferring. Chip Trainum, like Donnie mentioned, he's transferring. Jordan, or we don't know if they're transferring, but they entered the transfer portal. Also, Jordan Banks, he entered the transfer portal as well. Do we think we could look at them individually or look at them as a whole, but do we think this is just a product of the environment they were in? They just felt like they weren't getting enough opportunity. Like a guy like Chip, he just seemed to kind of be in the doghouse the last couple of weeks. Do we think this is more of an opportunity thing, or do they smell something in the water and they're just trying to get out of this program right now?
For Trainum, obviously I haven't talked to anybody. I don't have any insider info on this. Donnie's there more than I am. While I'm more with the Cardinals. But for Trainum, it seems more like he was going to be the guy next year. Like he was going to be there down to down back, paired up with Ngata, but he was going to be like potentially their most important position player on that offense other than Jaden Daniels. And so for him to go, he must be seeing, okay, I've probably put out enough that a big school will pick me up, that we can do something special next year that I don't see happening with Arizona State. And so that's, potentially, again, I don't know him, but that's potentially what I would think of when I first think, oh, he's going to the transfer portal. That's what I think. And then some of the other guys, it may just be what Millard said, like they didn't have the opportunity they thought they were going to get. And so they're going to go somewhere where they think that, they'll have it. And that's been the theme with college football, in recent seasons everywhere. There are so many transfers. I mean, this time period right now is almost kind of like signing day in a sense, just because guys it's like the trade deadline. It's crazy where guys are going back and forth. ASU added a bunch of guys just in this past week. They added a tight end from Missouri yesterday. They added a defensive back from Illinois. Earlier in the week, they added someone from Mississippi State. I mean, guys are flying all over the place. And so, we'll see exactly who's left. But yeah, to lose Trainum is really huge. I personally liked Tommy Hill a lot. I looked at him when he first committed to ASU, a lot of his tape and what people said about him, and I was a fan. So yeah, I think those are going to be two big losses, but we'll see, if they can keep everybody else who's not graduating on the train.
Yeah, I don't want to say the investigation is playing a whole big role into this. Recruiting, I definitely think did a little bit over the past couple months. But just in terms of like guys transferring out, I don't really think so. And Alex brought up a really good point whenever it came to Trainum becoming the guy next year. He really went into the doghouse this year. I mean, he fumbled 3 times within like a 4-game stretch. I have it pulled up right now that Trainum in his final 3 games of the year carried the ball for 15 times. And then just for comparison, Rachaad White carried the ball 21 times in the Arizona game alone. So, they definitely kind of tapered off. And even before the Trainum fumbling problems, I mean, it was really a true dynamic, like 1-2 punch. Like Trainum was used quite often in short yardage scenarios, goal-to-goal scenarios as well. I know it's just to pick up 3 yards and a cloud of dust, and anything else would be phenomenal after that. His skill set is great. And I think just like Alex said, I mean, he's going to put out a lot of really good stuff to attract big universities. Maybe he wants to go compete for a national championship. Maybe he just wants to go somewhere to, where he'll be the only running back in a stable. Because it looks like, it's going to be the same old stuff for Arizona State moving into 2022, because there's going to be a lot of running back usage. They're probably going to want to keep their guys fresh. You have a guy in Tevin White who's almost identical to Rachaad White, just in terms of style of play. I'm not talking about just pure talent. And so maybe Trainum. It's one of the reset that he probably didn't fall in the good graces of the coaching staff. He might have taken that personally. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know anybody that has spoken to him, but I'm willing to bet these guys transferring out is not a product of, the kind of unforeseeable future at ASU. It's just kind of, it happens. It's college football. It's in the modern era of these kids kind of deciding where they want to go and play. And you see this at almost every school. I mean, it's not uncommon at all. So I just think the investigation hanging over ASU right now, I think some people might be trying to reach for it when it might not be the case.
Yeah, and like Alex said, I love the frenzy that we see with the transfer portal right now. It's like the trade deadline. It's like free agency. Like, I'm a guy that likes the offseason just as much as the regular season for a lot of sports because I love the narratives. I love all the buzz, all these fake conversations that we have about how the regular season is going to go. So I love to see all these kids transfer, do whatever they want, do the LeBron 1+1 every year and just transfer every year. Like, I don't care. If that's what you want to do and it makes you happy, go ahead and do it. But for Chip, yeah, I'm surprised he's not coming back. Like we've been saying, he was going to be in line for a big role. I do like Nagata a lot. I just feel like he's probably a little undersized. So I don't know if he could handle the pounding over a full season. But for Chip, I feel like it wasn't just the fact that he was fumbling. We also can't forget, like, Rachaad White those last few weeks turned into a man with his hair on fire. He was ripping off consistently 200-yard games week after week, it seemed like he won like a few Pac-12 Player of the Weeks in those last month and a half. So Rachaad White, I think, also just kind of separated himself a little bit from Chip, wasn't having those fumbling issues. Meanwhile, Chip was struggling a little bit as well. So maybe that's why. Maybe he thought, hey, they're going to have another 3-headed committee next season. Let me get out of here and try to go get as much opportunity as I can. But before I want to talk a little bit about Rachaad White and Jayden Daniels, but real quick, as we're on the transfer portal, do you guys think there was any legitimacy to the rumors of a Spencer Rattler, Arizona native, coming to the Sun Devils? Whoever
Not
wants to
with
take
Jayden Daniels here. Not with Jayden Daniels coming back.
Exactly. I think Spencer Rattler definitely would not want to go to a place where he has to compete for a starting job. That being said, even if Jayden wasn't coming back, I'm not sure there wasn't maybe just a little bit more high-profile places that Spencer Rattler wouldn't have looked at. Oregon looks mighty tasty right now. UCLA is another school I've seen thrown about. Maybe a couple schools in Texas that Rattler might want to go to. He's definitely got his his pick of the litter whenever it comes to that sort of thing. I know everybody kind of fell in love with the hometown hero kid coming back, and Rattler coming back to Arizona State. Was it a pipe dream? Probably. I had some people blow smoke in front of me personally, and I did take debate on that. But yeah, I think Jayden coming back was definitely the seal on any hope of Rattler coming back home to ASU.
Oh, well, U of A still holding tryouts, so maybe he wants to go down there.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Play for a little Arizona football. But we talked about Jayden Daniels coming back. I feel like it's been kind of the same story with Daniels the last couple seasons. Like, heading into next season, are you guys even changing your expectation levels for Jayden Daniels? Like, do you actually expect him to take a leap in this offense under Coach Herm Edwards, or are we just expecting more of the same at this point of his career?
I would expect a leap. I think this was a disappointing year for him as far as his trajectory. He looked really, really stellar as a freshman and stepped up in some huge games down the stretch. That Washington State game, if you remember, where he did sort of that helicopter spin into the end zone. And then, of course, the Oregon game with that dynamite throw to Brandon Ayuk to really finish off any chance of a Pac-12 team making the college football playoff. And then last year was so bizarre, and they only got 4 games in, and it was just a complete and utter disaster for the program. But he still, looked promising, but he never really was able to kind of get into it. He had good games, but it was just sort of, weird. They play USC, they take 3 weeks off, they come back. It's very much a feel-out game against UCLA, and then he finally gets going. But there you go. You have 2 games left. And then this year was the year he was supposed to take that massive leap. And it not quite wasn't as accurate, threw more interceptions. It was weird. It was weird to see a player with, whose identity was safe with the football and accuracy do the opposite of those in some big games. So I would expect him to, look at those. He seems like a hardworking guy and, really kind of try to reinvent himself back to not what he was as a freshman, but that next level of the foundation he built for himself as a freshman, because it was really, really promising. And people were talking about him like, oh, if he has another couple of good years, he could be a first round or second round pick. And after watching the after watching tape from this past season, I don't think anybody's going to say that. So this is going to be his golden opportunity.
Yeah, before I throw it to you, Donnie, do you think the Pro Football Focus of college football when they said he was like not even a top 75 quarterback? Do we feel like that's a little bit more accurate as we sit here today at the end of the close to the end of the regular season for Arizona State football?
It's mean.
It's mean.
With how he played this year, probably right around there. But like that was preseason, and like Jaden Daniels was like humming in the preseason, so like probably a little bit unfair to him. And one point I do want to pick up is that Jaden never really got a sophomore season. You know, Alex already kind of alluded to it. He played 4 games. Those 4 games were absolute mess from an entire logistical standpoint. So this year is kind of his like full second season playing. And, you know, we all know of the sophomore slump and how, you know, guys kind of come back down to earth after playing so well their first year. I just think he got away from the basics that he did, right? Alex already mentioned the interceptions that he threw, and just some of the decision-making was not there, not on par. This offseason, I would really love for just him and Zak Hill, whoever else, just to sit down, break his entire, you know, body of work down and start from square one, get back to the basics, you know, and just go back to what made Jaden Daniels such a phenomenal quarterback, that you minimize the risk, you know, with his decision making, but you still have the upside of his talented arm and the athleticism that he provides. And I think as far as the NFL goes, it might have been a far-fetched dream this year to say that he would have been a first or second round pick, just because he's such a slender guy whenever it comes to being a quarterback and kind of fitting into that profile at the next level. I'm not really sure teams would have tried to take a chance on, you know, just him without bulking up or, you know, just filling his frame out a little bit more. This offseason, he has the opportunity, to do that. He has the opportunity to refine a lot of the small details that we harped on in the entire year this year, whether it be his footwork, his, you know, short to medium accuracy, his decision-making, his consistency, all of that stuff. He has a chance to kind of shut people up like me and Millard, and probably a whole lot more people that kind of ragged on him the entire season. So and I want to give him time just because he is such a young guy. And like all of these guys are, you know, like these guys have so much room for growth and potential. But at the end of the day, he's playing quarterback. He's going to be the one that gets criticized. He's going to be one that's going to get praised. And we saw a lot of criticism for Jaden Daniels last year. And I think the only thing that can shut haters up is, you know, his on-field performance next year. But to counter that really quick, I think he's going to have a worse team than he did this year. So I'm not exactly holding out hope for him having a bounce back year.
I want to make a comment on that quickly too, because Donnie, you mentioned like him not getting that sophomore year. And we look at their receiving core. A lot of those guys didn't really get a freshman season either, like Johnny Wilson and LV Bunkley Shelton and guys who were really highly recruited. Elijah Badger like literally didn't get a freshman season because he was ineligible. And, you know, a lot of those guys came in really highly recruited, very talented, and you can see it, but they just didn't get that separation. They didn't make those extra plays. They didn't help out Daniels a ton this season. That would be something else to look for, because if their receiving core can take a jump just with guys getting better, having now a full season of tape, that could also make a difference.
No, that's a great point, because the receivers, there were some games where you're like, yo, it doesn't matter what Jaden Daniels is doing today, because those receivers got bricks for hands today. Maybe it's cold, but it's Arizona, so it's never cold out here. Jaden Daniels as a freshman, 17 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Looked really good as a freshman. Like you said, Alex, this past season, though, 10 touchdowns, 9 picks. And I'm not really that worried about the 10 touchdowns, because ASU was just such a ground-heavy team. There were just games where I thought Jaden Daniels looked good, but he just didn't need to throw it a ton, or he didn't need to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns, because it was Rashad White running for 150 yards, plus you had chipping in 90 yards too. So it felt like you didn't always need Jaden Daniels' arm, but sometimes when you did need him to throw it a little bit, he would turn it over, which was something that we didn't see. Only 3 picks through those first 2 years, through his first 16 games, 9 picks in 12 games this year. The turnovers were an issue. Again, not all his bad play was his fault, because there was a lot of drops by those receivers this year, but some of the decision-making by Jaden Daniels was a little questionable. So when you bring up Donnie's point of him getting with Zak Hill this offseason, are we 100% sure that Zak Hill will be here next season? Because there has been some connections, guys. Maybe Auburn, maybe Nebraska. Are we 100% sure Zak Hill himself doesn't have a wandering eye for another program heading into 2022?
It seems like the Auburn deal isn't going to happen.
Mhm.
There's been some reports that Auburn is moving on. Nebraska, I haven't seen a whole lot on, so I think Donnie may know a little bit more about that than I do. But I don't know. It's a weird season for coaches. And it's like I feel like everybody's rumored to go everywhere else.
Yeah. Thanks, Lincoln.
Yeah, honestly. So yeah, I don't know. I would say that probably, at this stage with some of the coaching jobs that have gone, I would imagine him returning, but I don't know.
I don't have much more of a grip on it than you or Alex or Millard or anybody else does. I can tell you that I do think Zak Hill and Herm Edwards do get along pretty well. So I don't think Herm is like kind of trying to push Zach out the door. At the same time, I do think if another major opportunity opened up to where Zach could maybe make a little bit more money, excuse me, maybe head to a more prestigious program, however you deem that, he might take that leap, and I certainly wouldn't blame him. But it kind of looks like, unless like a phenomenal offer comes to the door of Zak Hill, it looks like he's going to be in Tempe for another year.
Yeah, and staying in Tempe is not the worst thing. Got the
Nah,
sunny
not at all.
skies, you got the warm weather. He's gonna have his fingerprints all over this program. So we need to see what he does with Jaden Daniels. We need to see that Jaden Daniels leap at this point of his career. I'm probably lukewarm on Jaden Daniels, and this overall ASU experience has been a very stressful time watching this team over the last few years. So Donnie, there was a point of the season after like 3 games, I told you I was all in on the Sun Devils bandwagon, and by the time we got to the Territorial Cup, I think you were the one, you weren't driving it, but I think it was even before the Territorial Cup where you felt a little bit better about this team. I was all the way off this bandwagon. So heading into next season, I'm staying as far away as I can from this bandwagon. I'm not going to get excited about this team until we're about 10 games through next season. Like that, I need to see basically a full season before I get back in on this team because they've just ripped my hearts out too many times. But let's transition the conversation a little bit as we wrap up the All Sun Devils podcast. And let's talk about another team that has that does a very good job of ripping our hearts out too. And it's the other ASU team here that we're going to talk about, which is ASU basketball. And Donnie, have you come around to the idea that ASU basketball might not be in store for a very good season? Because like we always like to mention, their arguably best player is a man who's currently 40 years old, Kamani Lawrence. I always got to start off ASU basketball talk with a shot at Kamani Lawrence. ASU basketball is currently, I have the record here, 3-6 on the season. They are 2-2 at home, 1-1 in conference play. The Sun Devils' leading scorer is DJ Horn at 13 points per game. The Sun Devil team has not looked too good. They had I forgot who it was, but they had a pretty disgusting loss. I think it was to Illinois State or something. Like they've lost some disgusting
Had a couple
games.
actually.
Yeah, they had that buzzer beater. Like, what have you seen so far from ASU basketball this season? And do you still feel anything at any expectation level for this team heading into the final months?
So I do want to say the game where they lost to Washington State at home to open Pac-12 play, like I'm not kidding, I'm not being funny. That was the worst basketball game I have ever watched. Like 29 points, 10 points scored at halftime at home versus a probably middle of the road Washington State Cougar team. Literally the worst basketball game I've ever seen played ever at any level. Like talking kids basketball, everything. Yeah,
YMCA.
I've hooped with people better than the product I saw. That being said, though, I did think they bounced back pretty nicely on the road at Oregon. Got their first road win there in about 10 years. A crucial overtime victory where, like you said, DJ Horn, the team's leading scorer, put the team on his back. And let's not forget, Marcus Bagley, still out with a knee injury. Just kind of being precautious with him. Don't necessarily want to, rush him back and kind of do any further damage to that knee. I think it's still a team that, is capable of making the tournament. I'm not quite as high on them as it was at the beginning of the year. But we also have to remember, 9 new players in the lineup this year, 3 of them being point guard transfers from, 3 different conferences. There's bound to be a little bit of growing pains. I think they are starting to gel together a little bit. And they have just with them and Marcus Bagley being out for a couple of games now, they really haven't had the opportunity to kind of mold themselves as a team. Then he went on that trip to the Bahamas and just got demolished by, very good teams, whether it be Baylor, Loyola, Chicago, or Syracuse. I mean, all three of those are going to make the tournament this year. So they opted for a very tough schedule early to try to, kind of get those guys battle tested. And I feel like that's already paid off in the road win versus Oregon. So yeah, I'm a little bit hopeful they can kind of right the ship moving forward.
That Oregon win is gigantic. It's a gigantic victory. And the way that they did it, like in crunch time, staying together, and that was really not a statement win, but it really makes you think that, okay, because of how new this is and because of how many guys they're relying on who have not played here before, it's going to be ugly in a lot of these games. Like Donnie mentioned that Washington State game. I feel like that's the last we need to mention, the Washington State game. I think Bobby Hurley said he was hiding afterwards. Yeah, but to come back, like in the game after that, to come back on the road and beat an Oregon team that's always going to be competitive, that's huge. It's huge. The way they did it was huge. And I think with more time, even if it's ugly throughout the entire month of December, I think if you look at this team in January and February, that's where you're going to really start to see a little bit more gelling. Donnie mentioned the word growing pains. It's already been painful in a few of these games. I was sitting in the in sort of the not the rafters per se, but basically near the top when they lost to Riverside on the buzzer beater, and there were some moments in that game where just like, how is this going to work? But you see the inklings of it in some of their other games of this offense coming together. And Bagley, that's going to be the big headline for them until he gets back, because when is he coming back? It seems like it's not too far off. Bobby Hurley said it wasn't an injury that'll keep him out for a substantial amount of time, even if it's a few weeks. So when he comes back, they get a little bit more time. Millard, you may want to turn on a few of their games, I would say in January, and then judge it after that point. But I would give it a little bit of time first.
We'll get a little bit of time, but if you want to know how bad the state of ASU basketball is right now, I typed in ASU basketball in Google, and the first thing that popped up was Alabama State basketball. Arizona State was not the first suggestion by Google. It was Alabama State before Arizona State. So I think that piques a little eye, and I got some, I don't know what that was. I got some numbers here. There are 12 teams in the Pac-12, hence the name the Pac-12, but ASU basketball is currently, they are 11th in field goal percentage, 10th in three-point percentage, 11th in free throw percentage, 1st in turnovers, and 10th in points. Sometimes you don't have to do a deep dive into the numbers. Sometimes you just got to look at the traditional counting stats to know why a team is struggling. When you can't score the basketball and you turn it over constantly, you're probably going to struggle to win games. So we'll see if ASU basketball team can turn it around as the season progresses. Alex, I'll wait to January, but right now, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to change 2 months. I just don't see the talent. Of course, you need Marcus Bagley on the court because he seems like the best player on this team, at least the most explosive athlete this team has. I'm not sure what they could really do if they could make the tournament without him, but I think they need a Marcus Bagley on this team to at least raise their ceiling a little bit and raise their floor too. He can do a little bit of everything with the ball. So I'll give ASU basketball a little bit more time, but I'm telling you right now, I'm probably out on this team. But that's going to be it for this AllSunDevils podcast. I know. I apologize, Alex. I'm negative
like this all year, Alex.
I'm out on this team. Yeah, ASU football, I'm all in, baby. But ASU basketball,
you said you were out on them too.
I was at the end of the season. I was out. Through 3 games, I was in on ASU football. But then by the end, I was like, "Yo, this team."
Maybe the opposite effect. You're out on them after their first,
10
games or however many, and then the rest of the season you'll be in. Who knows?
I'm praying that's the case. But let's do something new today. As we wrap up here, Donnie, Alex, give the people your social handles of where they can find you on social media. Whoever wants to go first.
At Donnie Druin, DONNIE DRUIN. Pretty simple.
At Alex J. Weiner, just the name you see there, but with a J in the middle.
Yeah, and at Creator Thomas 24 if you guys want to follow me or any of us on Twitter. And of course, if you want to stay up to date on the latest Sun Devil news, just head to allsundevils.com where you got all the boys working around the clock just for you.